It was supposed to be a quick stop. Milk, bread, some fruit, and I'd be on my way home. But life has a way of turning the ordinary into the extraordinary. I was rolling my cart down the cereal aisle, humming absent-mindedly, when I felt something soft wrap around my legs. I froze. I looked down, and there she was. A tiny girl, maybe 5 years old, her hair in 2 messy braids, clutching me with all the strength in her small body. Her lips trembled. Her eyes brimmed with tears. "Mommy!" she cried. The word hit me like a thunderclap. My breath caught in my chest. My fingers went slack on the cart handle. I knelt down, meeting her gaze. She looked at me with desperate relief, like I was the answer to a prayer. But she wasn't mine. "Honey, a broken bar," I whispered gently, "I'm not your mom." She shook her head wildly, clinging tighter. Her small hands dug into my jeans like she was afraid I'd vanish. That's when I heard heavy footsteps pounding behind us. A man came running down the aisle. Tall. Muscular. Dressed in a simple gray shirt and jeans, but there was something about him that screamed tension. He saw me. And he stopped dead in his tracks. His face drained of color. His jaw slackened. His hands trembled as he pulled out his phone. His voice was low, broken, but firm. "It's her." And in that instant everything around me changed. The intercom crackled above. "All exits are closed. Security, lockdown now." I spun around in shock. Shoppers gasped. Doors clanged as metal barriers dropped over the sliding glass. People whispered, eyes darting between me and the man. I felt their stares like burning flames against my skin. 2 guards rushed toward us. "Ma'am, don't move." "What?" I stammered. "I didn't do anything." "What is this?" The little girl clung tighter, sobbing into my leg. The man's voice shook as he pointed at me. "That's her. That's the woman who abandoned us." "Abandoned?" My mind reeled. "I don't know you," I cried. "I don't know her." But the man's face twisted with fury. "You don't remember me? You don't remember what you did to us?" The crowd gasped again. It felt like the whole store was against me, believing him, watching me drown. "I'm telling you," I pleaded to the guards, "this is a mistake." But the man's words cut like knives. "You left her. You left me. And you thought we'd never find you. But here you are." I shook my head violently. "No, a broken bar, no, I don't know what you're talking about." And yet a broken bar somewhere deep inside, something stirred. A memory. A face. A night I had buried long ago. The girl's eyes. Those big brown eyes. They reminded me of someone. And then, like a dam breaking, flashes hit me. A family photo I'd once found hidden in my mother's closet. A man with those same eyes. A baby I didn't recognize. And my mother's trembling hands, shoving the photo back into a box, saying, "You don't need to see this. Forget it." But I hadn't forgotten. Not really. That man. That little girl. They weren't strangers. They were blood. My chest tightened. I could barely breathe. "Who are you?" I whispered, even though I already knew. The man's jaw clenched. His voice broke. "I'm your brother." The crowd gasped. The security guards froze. My knees nearly buckled. "Yeah, broken bar, I don't have a brother," I whispered. But he shook his head violently. "Yes, you do. You just never knew. Because our mother made sure you never would." The room spun. My legs wobbled. The girl clung tighter. And in that moment, one truth shattered my world. My own family had betrayed me. I wanted to scream. I wanted to collapse. But instead, I felt something else rising inside me. Fire. If my family had kept this secret from me, broken bar, if they had lied all these years, a broken bar, then I wasn't just the victim. I was the one who would make them pay. And that day in the grocery store was just the beginning. If you're hooked already, don't forget to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more powerful stories that will leave you thinking long after they end. The grocery store felt like it was collapsing in on me. Everyone's eyes were still on me, burning with suspicion, like I was some criminal who had been caught red-handed. My legs trembled, my throat dry, but my mind a broken bar, my mind was racing. A brother? How could that be? I had grown up as an only child. My parents drilled that into me every time I asked why I didn't have siblings. They always said, "You're enough. You're all we ever wanted." But now this man, this stranger with familiar eyes, was standing in front of me, a little girl clinging to my leg like I was the lifeline she'd been praying for. And deep inside, under the panic and confusion, something was telling me he wasn't lying. I wanted to deny it, to scream at him, to push it all away. But the memories that I had buried for years kept bubbling back. My mother's secretive looks. My father's sudden mood swings whenever adoption or family came up. The locked box in the attic I was never allowed to touch. The man's voice cracked as he repeated himself, louder this time, "You are my sister. You left us. You abandoned me, and now you pretend you don't know me?" The little girl sobbed harder against me. I crouched down, stroking her hair almost instinctively, my own tears welling up in confusion. "Sweetheart, a broken bar, I don't know what's happening. I don't a broken bar." The man's voice boomed again. "Her name is Emily." The name hit me like a punch. Emily. That was my grandmother's name. The grandmother I'd never met. The grandmother my parents refused to talk about. The little girl's head snapped up when he said it, her tear-soaked cheeks glowing under the harsh fluorescent lights. She looked at me with hope, as if the name itself was supposed to unlock something in me. And in a way, it did. I was dizzy. My vision blurred. But I held myself together. Because even though my world was unraveling, one thing became crystal clear: my parents had lied to me my whole life. Security pulled me aside while the man comforted the girl. One of the guards whispered into his radio. The other blocked anyone from getting too close. The shoppers were still whispering, some pointing, others just watching the scene play out like it was a movie. "Ma'am, we need to ask you some questions," the guard said firmly. "I don't know what this is," I said, my voice shaking. "But I promise you, I didn't do anything. I don't even know them." The man spun around, his face red with anger. "Don't know us? You're the reason she cries every night. You're the reason our family broke apart." His words stabbed me deeper than I expected. Because while I wanted to scream that he was lying, the look in his eyes told me he believed every single word. And that meant there was a story here. A story my family had hidden. A story I was about to uncover. That night, when I finally made it home, I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. I just sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the ceiling, trying to breathe through the storm in my chest. My phone buzzed endlessly, calls from unknown numbers, texts from relatives I hadn't spoken to in years, even social media messages from strangers who had somehow already heard rumors about what happened in the grocery store. The whispers spread faster than wildfire. I had been exposed. And it wasn't by accident. Someone wanted this to happen. I thought about the man's face. The way he said our mother made sure you never knew. I grabbed my keys at midnight, heart pounding, and drove to my parents' house. When my mother opened the door in her robe, Her eyes went wide. She knew instantly. She didn't even ask why I was there. She just sighed, stepped aside, and said quietly, "So Broken Bar, you found him." My stomach turned. So it was true. I walked inside, my hands trembling. Why? Why didn't you ever tell me? Why did you pretend I didn't have a brother? She sank into a chair, clutching the fabric of her robe tightly. Because it was the only way to protect you. Protect me? From what? From who? Her voice shook as she spoke. Your father, a Broken Bar, made mistakes. He had another child before you. With another woman. We agreed to never let it ruin our marriage. We agreed to never tell you. But then a Broken Bar, things got complicated. I stared at her in disbelief. My heart thudded against my ribs. Complicated? That's not complicated, that's betrayal. You lied to me every single day of my life. She buried her face in her hands, but I didn't feel sorry for her. Because in that moment, I realized something: my whole childhood, my entire sense of identity, had been built on lies. And lies demand consequences. I stormed out of that house, my mind already spinning. If my parents thought they could erase an entire sibling from my life, if they thought they could bury secrets so deep I'd never find them, then they had underestimated me. Because now, I wasn't just the daughter who had been lied to. I was the sister who had been robbed. And I was ready to get even. Don't forget, if this story has you hooked, make sure to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel so you never miss the next twist. You're not going to want to miss how this ends. Sleep never came that night. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, my chest tight with rage and betrayal. My mother's words kept replaying over and over: your father made mistakes. We agreed to never tell you. Mistakes? Is that what they called it? A hidden child? A broken family? A brother I was never supposed to know? The next morning, I couldn't pretend everything was normal. I skipped work, drove past the grocery store where it had all happened, and parked across the street. I wanted to see if the man, my so-called brother, would be there again. I wanted answers, real answers, not half-truths from my mother. Hours passed before I saw him. He walked out of the store with the little girl holding his hand, a paper bag of groceries under his arm. She laughed at something he said, her braids bouncing as she skipped beside him. My heart ached at the sight. She had my grandmother's name. She had eyes that mirrored my own. She was blood. And I'd been kept away from her my whole life. I stepped out of the car before I could stop myself. My voice cracked as I called out. Wait. He froze, turning sharply. His jaw tightened when he saw me, his eyes narrowing with suspicion and pain. What do you want? His voice was cold, defensive. I swallowed hard. I just want to talk. His lips curled into a bitter smile. Now you want to talk? After everything? The little girl tugged at his sleeve. Dad, you Broken Bar, is that mommy again? The word hit me like a knife. Mommy. The way she said it, so naturally, as if her world had been shaped around believing I was supposed to be that person. He crouched down to her level. No, sweetheart. She's not your mommy. She's the reason you don't have one. The words sliced through me. What do you mean by that? I demanded, my voice trembling. He stood up, his face hard as stone. Our mother destroyed my family to protect hers. And now you walk around acting like you don't know me, like you're innocent. You don't deserve to be near us. I shook my head. I didn't even know you existed until yesterday. Do you think I would have chosen this? Do you think I wanted to be kept in the dark? He glared at me, his fists clenched. Ignorance doesn't erase the damage. For a moment, I didn't know what to say. But as I stood there, feeling the burn of his hatred, I realized something: if he hated me this much, it wasn't just because of the past. Someone had fueled that hatred. Someone had poisoned him against me. And I knew exactly who that was. My parents. They hadn't just lied to me. They had lied to him too. They had built walls between us, making me look like the villain, and making themselves the saviors. That's when the fire inside me grew. It wasn't enough to just confront them anymore. I needed to destroy the lies. I needed to expose them. I needed revenge. That night, I drove back to my parents' house. My father was in the living room, reading the newspaper like it was any other day, as if his entire past wasn't unraveling in front of him. I stood in the doorway, trembling with fury. "How could you?" He looked up slowly, his face unreadable. "I assume your mother told you." "Told me?" I laughed bitterly. "She confessed a fraction. You had a son before me. A son you abandoned. A son you made me believe didn't exist. And now he hates me because of you." He set the newspaper down, his jaw tightening. "It's complicated." "Stop calling it complicated," I shouted. "It's betrayal. You lied to him, and you lied to me. Do you know what it feels like to have your whole life ripped apart in a grocery store? To have a child call you mommy when you've never even met her before?" His eyes flickered, but he stayed silent. "Why didn't you tell me?" My voice cracked. "Why didn't you ever give me the chance to know him?" Finally, he spoke. His tone was low, firm, almost cold. "Because you are mine." He wasn't. The words stole my breath. "You are mine," he repeated. He was the result of a mistake. A mistake I tried to erase. Your mother agreed. We chose you. And that meant choosing to leave him behind. My vision blurred with tears, but beneath them, anger boiled hotter than ever before. "You don't get to decide who's worthy of family," I spat. "You don't get to erase people just because it's convenient. You ruined his life. You ruined mine. And you don't even care." He stood, his face red with anger. "Care? I built this life for you. I gave you everything. Do you think you'd be who you are if I had split my attention between you and him? I chose to protect you." "No," I whispered. "You chose to protect yourself." That was the last straw. From that moment, my revenge wasn't just about uncovering secrets. It was about exposing them. Making sure the world knew who my parents really were. And I knew exactly how to start. I still had that family photo I'd once found in the attic, the one my mother had tried to hide from me. I dug it out that night, staring at the faces that now haunted me: my father, a younger version of the man I'd met, and a baby with eyes that matched mine. The proof was there. The lies were crumbling. And I was going to burn the rest of it down myself. I didn't sleep for days after I found that photo. The edges were curled like old secrets, the faces a blur of everything I wasn't allowed to know. My father had one arm around a woman I didn't recognize. In his other arm, a baby. Next to them stood the man from the store, but younger, a teenager with a guarded smile. There was a date in one corner. I was alive when this was taken. I was a toddler. Which meant every birthday I'd had, every family dinner I sat through, every quiet night with my parents' perfect house and careful voice as a broken bar, that photo existed somewhere in the dark, telling a truth I wasn't allowed to see. I needed proof no one could rewrite. I needed more than a memory and a photo that they could claim was fake or taken out of context. So I went hunting in places people think are invisible. County records. Old court filings. Hospital archives. I told myself I was just looking, but I knew I was building a case. Not for a courtroom. For my life. At the courthouse, I ran my father's name through the public terminal until my eyes ached. There it was. A file number. Sealed in parts, but with an index listing petition to relinquish and support order A vacated by stipulation. It meant something happened, then got undone. It meant a life was rearranged on paper. I took notes with shaking hands, paid for copies of what I could, and left with manila envelopes that felt heavier than stone. The hospital records took longer. I learned the name of the woman in the photo, Lena. Her address from back then. A note that said mother discharged with infant, father not present. I stared at those words until they blurred. The father not present was mine. Not present, yet everywhere. I found an old address for Lena and drove there on a Sunday morning when the sky was that faded blue that makes every street look like a memory. An older neighbor was watering geraniums in a hanging basket. I showed her the photo. "Do you remember her?" I asked. She leaned closer. The hose dripped onto her sandal. She looked up at me slowly. "Yes," she said. "And I remember him. He came around with gifts and promises, then stopped coming. He wore a wedding ring he kept in his pocket." My throat tightened. "Do you know where she went?" The neighbor sighed. "She left in a hurry. Said she couldn't fight money and shame at the same time. Said she'd been paid to disappear and threatened when she didn't." I felt dizzy. "Paid by who?" The neighbor looked at the photo again, then at me, and I knew she saw something of him in me. "She didn't say," the woman whispered. "But the last time I saw her, she was holding a letter. She looked sick. Said it wasn't safe anymore. She gave me this in case anyone ever came looking for the truth." The neighbor disappeared inside and came back with a brittle envelope tied with twine. In my car, with the door closed, I opened it carefully. The letter was short. A date. The words were neat, almost gentle: "We have to protect what we built. You can keep what we send if you leave quietly. If not, we will take what you love. We will take him." It wasn't signed. But I recognized my mother's handwriting. I cried in that parked car while the world went on around me. Then I folded the letter, slid it back into the envelope, and whispered, "Thank you." The neighbor stood watching from the porch. I lifted a hand and she lifted hers. We didn't need to say anything else. I met my brother where the air smelled like coffee and flour, a small bakery with fogged windows from the ovens. He didn't want to sit at first. He kept his distance like my shadow might touch him and leave a mark. Emily clung to his hand and stared at the glass case full of croissants like they were planets. "I brought something," I said. I placed the photo, the court copies, and the letter on the table. He didn't touch them for a long time. Then he did. His knuckles whitened as he read. His voice was so small when he finally spoke. "They told me you knew. That you laughed about it. That you called me a mistake. That you refused to meet me when I tried years ago." My hands shook. "I didn't know. I swear to you, I didn't. They kept you like a ghost in the attic. They made sure I never heard your name." He looked up. It wasn't forgiveness. It was something scarier. The first crack in a wall that had been load-bearing his whole life. "Then why did Emily call you Mommy?" he asked. I turned to the little girl. She had my grandmother's name and, up close, she had our father's stubborn chin. I softened my voice. "Sweetheart, why did you call me that?" She swung her feet against the chair leg. "Daddy said Mommy had brown hair and eyes like warm tea and a dimple when she smiled." She pointed at my face. "You have all that. And you felt like her when I hugged you." I swallowed a lump that wouldn't go away. "Do you have a picture of your mommy?" She nodded. My brother pulled out an old phone with a cracked screen and opened a photo. A woman stood in sunlight, laughing at something outside the frame, hair falling in her face. The resemblance wasn't perfect, but grief and hope make twins of strangers. I could see how a 5-year-old lost in a store might run toward the nearest warmth and call it home. "I'm sorry," my brother said. He looked at the letter again. "They did this to us." "They did," I said. "But they don't get to finish it." He gave a humorless laugh. "What are you going to do? Post about it? People forget. They always do." "Not this time," I said. "Not when there are receipts. Not when there's a child in the middle. Not when there's a man whose reputation is built on being an upstanding husband, a generous neighbor, a board member who gives speeches about honesty and family." My brother exhaled like he'd been punched. "You're talking about Dad." "I'm talking about the man who made us into two sides of a lie," I said. "I don't know who he is to you. I only know who he's been to me. But I am done being polite about it." Emily asked if she could have a croissant. I bought her two and a chocolate milk. While she ate, I told my brother everything. The security doors at the store. The way shame works like a trapdoor. The letter. The court index. The hospital note. And the thing I hadn't told anyone, the recording on my phone. The night I confronted my father in the living room, I laid my keys on the end table and forgot to pick them up. Or maybe I didn't forget. My key fob has a tiny built-in microphone. It turns on with a double tap. I pressed it when he started talking about mistakes and choosing. I recorded every word he said about protecting what we built and erasing the problem. I didn't do it to be clever. I did it because I needed to hear him say the thing I'd been scared to name, that his love had always been conditional, and I had been a condition too. I slid the phone across the table now. "Listen." We listened together. My father's voice was steady at first, then fraying. The words were simple, brutal. He had chosen. He had paid. He had scared someone away to make room for his version of a good life. He never said Lena's name. He said her. Like she was an inconvenience, not a person. When the recording ended, we were quiet. Emily licked chocolate off her thumb and said, "Daddy, can we go to the park after this?" "Yes," he said, and his voice broke on the single syllable. I reached into my bag and pulled out a small white box. "There's one more thing," I said. Inside were 2 DNA test kits. "If you need this to trust me, we do it. If you don't, we still do it, so no one can call us liars." He looked at the box, then at me. His shoulders dropped. "Okay," he said. "We do it." We swabbed our cheeks in the bakery bathroom, labeled the tubes with shaking hands, and mailed them together. We didn't talk about what to do if the result came back the way we already felt it would. We didn't need to. The plan took shape in the small hours when sleep won't come and your mind is a projector you can't shut off. My parents' 40th anniversary party was in 3 weeks. They had booked a hotel ballroom with white tablecloths and a string quartet. He had invited everyone, coworkers, neighbors, relatives I only saw at weddings and funerals. The invitation said, "Join us to celebrate a love that stood the test of time." I stared at that sentence until it looked like static. Then I opened a new note on my phone and typed, "Join us to celebrate the truth that survived the lie." I called the hotel and asked about slideshow capabilities. The manager, polite and cheerful, described their projector, their sound system, the way the staff helps queue up a tribute video. I thanked him and asked if they could handle HDMI from a laptop and a live audio source. He said yes. I booked the AV package under my name. I told my mother I wanted to surprise them with a special presentation. She was thrilled. She said I'd always had a flair for the dramatic. She laughed. I didn't. I asked the neighbor who gave me the letter if she would be willing to speak on camera. She nodded and invited me into her kitchen. She wore the same sandals. She read the letter aloud in a steady voice while I recorded. When she finished, she looked into the lens and said, "We do not protect love by harming the innocent." I had to stop the recording because my hands were shaking. I posted in a private online group for adult siblings who found each other late. I asked how to protect a child in the middle of family storms. People wrote back with more tenderness than the world usually gives. One message said, "Keep the drama away from her. Let the adults burn their paper houses by themselves." I printed that sentence and taped it to my fridge. I went to my father's office building on my lunch break and stood across the street. He came out with a colleague, laughing. He looked like a man who had never been caught by anything. I filmed him on my phone and whispered to myself, before and after. Not to post. To remind myself that there are days when you still look like yesterday, even when tomorrow is already happening. The DNA results came back on a Thursday morning, in an email with confetti that felt obscene. We found family. Half-sibling, 26% shared DNA. Relationship likelihood, greater than 99%. I forwarded it to my brother with no subject line. He wrote back one word, "Sister." I stared at that word until it swam. Then I sent him the party date and time and asked if he wanted to be there. He replied, "Only if Emily stays home. She doesn't need a memory like that." I wrote back, "Agreed." In the days before the party, my mother called me 3 times a day to ask about slides and songs and whether I remembered the photo of me in the pink dress at age 7. I told her I remembered. I did. It was the day my father cancelled the picnic because it rained and we had cake in the living room instead. He cut the slices too big and we ate with our hands. It was the day he taught me how to play Heart and Soul on the piano. There had been beautiful days. That's the cruelty of it. The harm and the tenderness lived in the same house and borrowed each other's sweaters. On the afternoon of the party, I met my brother in the hotel parking lot. He wore a suit that didn't quite fit and a look that said he might pass out or run or both. I hugged him anyway. He didn't hug back at first. Then he did. We stood like that until a busboy pushed a cart of wine glasses past us and said, "Excuse me," and the spell broke. "You don't have to speak," I told him. "You don't have to do anything. I'll handle it." He nodded. "Just a broken bar, don't let him turn you into the villain again." "I won't," I said. He taught me how to hold a story. He forgot he taught me how to write one too. Inside, the ballroom was a bouquet of white and silver candles. Linen napkins folded into swans. My parents stood near the entrance, greeting guests like royalty. My father kissed my cheek and said, "Thank you for doing this, sweetheart." My mother teared up. "We're so proud of you," she said. It took everything in me not to say, "Wait 5 minutes." When it was time for speeches, the MC asked everyone to take their seats. The quartet softened their bowstrokes into silence. The room turned toward the stage. I walked up feeling like my bones were made of glass. "Thank you for being here," I began. My voice sounded calm. "I don't know how. We gathered to celebrate a love that stood the test of time." I paused, then added, "Tonight, we are going to tell the whole truth about that time." A few chuckles. My father smiled, assuming I was going to roast him gently. My mother dabbed her eyes, ready to be adored. I clicked the remote. The first image on the screen was the photo from the attic, my father, a woman named Lena, a baby, and a teenage boy. The date in the corner. A murmur moved across the room like wind in tall grass. My father's smile wavered. My mother's hand tightened on her napkin. This is also our family, I said. This has always been our family. I learned that in a grocery store when a little girl hugged my legs and called me mommy. Security closed the doors. A man pointed at me and said, "Hey, it's her." That was the day the truth decided it had waited long enough. I played the neighbor's recording. She appeared on the screen in her kitchen, the geraniums visible through the window. She read the letter. She said the line about protecting love. Someone near the front gasped. Someone near the back whispered, "Oh my God." Then I pressed play on the audio file. My father's voice filled the ballroom. He talked about protecting what we built. He talked about erasing the problem. He sounded calm. He sounded like a man explaining house repairs. My mother's face drained of color so fast I thought she might faint. My father stood up. "Turn that off," he said. "This is a private I didn't turn it off. I let his words finish. Then I said, "You once told me love is about showing up. This is me, showing up." The room had gone beyond murmurs. It was quiet like a church that just remembered why it was built. I scanned the faces, a neighbor with her mouth covered, an uncle staring at the tablecloth, a coworker frowning as if the puzzle pieces wouldn't fit until he rearranged everything he believed. My father started toward the stage. "You don't understand," he said. It wasn't a shout. It was worse. It was the voice he used when he was certain he was right. "I understand enough," I said. "And so does your son." Heads turned. My brother stood in the doorway. He hadn't wanted to. He had said he couldn't. But there he was, in the frame like a last line added to a poem at the printer. He didn't move until my father stopped, as if the floor had caught his shoes. My brother walked forward slowly. He didn't look at anyone but the man who made us. He reached into his jacket pocket and took out a paper. "Half-sibling," he read. 26% shared DNA. Relationship likelihood greater than 99%. He held up the page with the lab's letterhead. "You told me," she laughed, he said to my father. His voice shook, but he found the center. "You told me she knew. You told me she chose you over me. You used her to make your cruelty look like protection." My father's jaw flexed. "I did what I had to do for my family." My brother nodded once, like a judge acknowledging a plea he'd already decided on. "You did what you had to do for your reputation." My mother stood, tears on her cheeks. "We were scared," she said. "We were young. We thought if we closed one door, the house would be safer." "Then why did you lock it from the outside?" I asked. My voice cracked for the first time. "Why did you leave a boy on the other side of it?" No one ate the cake. The quartet didn't play another note. People left quietly, the way they leave hospitals at visiting hours. My parents stood like statues, toppled gently and sat upright again as a dare. When the last guest had gone, my father sat down. He looked smaller. He looked old. "What do you want?" he asked. Not defiant. Just empty. "I want you to tell the truth to the people you lied to," I said. "I want you to support the child you endangered with your story. I want you to stop pretending love is tidy. I want you to apologize to the woman you paid to disappear. I don't know where she is. I will try to find her. You can help or you can stay in your palace of silence. But either way, the walls are gone." He stared at the table, at the crooked place where a votive candle had melted into a small puddle of wax. "You want to destroy me," he said. "No," I said. "I want to stop you from destroying what's left." We didn't hug that night. We didn't speak again for a while. The next day he resigned from 2 boards. He sent a letter to his colleagues full of words like reflection and accountability. The newspapers didn't call. This wasn't a scandal anyone could turn into clicks without more blood. The real consequence was smaller and heavier. When he walked down the street, some people crossed to the other side. When he went to the grocery store, the cashier looked him in the eye and said, "Have a good day," like it was a choice he had to make now, not a default. At home, I kept the lights low for a week. I listened to the recording once more and then I deleted it. Not because he didn't deserve consequence, but because I deserved quiet. The neighbor returned the original letter to me with a hug that lasted exactly as long as I needed. I made a copy and put the original in a safe deposit box next to the DNA results and the court index. Not trophies. Just truth that wouldn't need a witness to stand up. My brother and I began to build something that didn't look like anything our father would understand. It was slow and awkward. We talked about ordinary things first. Shoes. Traffic. The way Emily dipped French fries into her milkshake and called it soup. Then, sometimes, we talked about the years between us. The birthdays he spent with a cake his mother bought with tips. The Christmas Eve I got a bicycle while he got a polite knock that said "move along." The first time he said sister to my face felt like someone opening a window in a room I hadn't realized was airless. We kept Emily out of the storm. When she asked about the party, we told her it was loud and the cake was too sweet. When she asked why Daddy looked sad some mornings, we said grown-ups carry heavy bags sometimes and then put them down. When she asked if I was her mommy again, I knelt and said, "No, sweetheart. I'm your aunt. I am going to be here as long as you want me." She nodded solemnly and asked if aunts know how to braid. I said I would learn. I learned. On Sundays, we met in the park with a picnic blanket and peanut butter sandwiches. I kept small hair ties on my wrist and practiced parting and weaving until the braids were even and neat. Emily named them. "This one is brave," she'd say, touching the left braid. "This one is kinder," she'd say, touching the right. I told her those were perfect names. I told her hair remembers the hands that care for it. I told her stories about a grandmother she would never meet who planted marigolds and hummed in the kitchen and laughed like the sound of wind chimes. I left out the part where she wrote the letter. Love and harm, again, sharing a sweater. Months passed. My father sent a letter. It was handwritten and clumsy. He didn't ask for forgiveness. He asked for a meeting with my brother. He wrote, "I will sit where you tell me and listen for as long as you want." My brother stared at the letter for a long time. Then he nodded without looking up and said, "Okay." One meeting. They met in a public library in a glass-walled room meant for study groups. I waited at a table outside and pretended to read a book I couldn't see the words of. They spoke for 2 hours. There were long silences and short sentences that landed like stones in a pond. When my brother came out, his face looked like someone had pressed every button on it. He didn't say what they talked about. He only said, I needed him to hear it with no excuses. That night, for the first time, he slept through until morning. We never found Lena. We tried. Private investigators. Old address forwarding. A woman with the same name in another state who ran a flower shop and cried softly when we told her why we were calling because she had left someone once and carried the weight like a brick in her coat pocket. It's possible Lena started over with a new name. It's possible she is gone. It's possible she will see a video someday of a hotel ballroom where the past finally stood up and took attendance and she will say to the screen, "I knew you would come." If she is alive, I hope the knowledge lands like comfort and not like salt. My mother and I took longer. Betrayal by a parent is a special kind. It keeps its furniture arranged even after you move it. She sent me a text a month after the party, "I don't know how to fix this." I wrote back, Start by telling the truth to yourself without the word but. She sent a small sum of money to my brother with a note that said, "I don't expect a response." He didn't respond. Not yet. Time is not a paint thinner. It is a garden. You have to tend it. I didn't set out to ruin anyone. I set out to stop being ruined. That's what revenge finally meant to me. Not a fire that burns everything. A door that opens and stays open, even if the people who hid it stand there shivering. They can come in when they're ready. Or not. But the air will move. The house will breathe. When I pass the grocery store now, I still feel the ghost of that small body colliding with my legs and anchoring me to a truth I had been trained to float away from. Sometimes I park and go inside and buy one thing I don't need. A lemon. A spool of twine. A jar of honey that tastes like summer if you close your eyes. I picture the metal gates coming down and I think, we're not trapped anymore. We just thought we were. One evening, sitting on the grass while Emily made up a game only she understood, my brother looked at me and said, "You could have looked away. You could have decided it wasn't your problem. You didn't." I thought about it, I admitted. It would have been easier for a while. He shook his head. Easy is just short for eventually worse. We laughed, the kind of laugh that lets the day know it did not win. I don't know if my father will ever be the man I needed. I don't know if my mother will ever stop defending her fear. I do know that the little girl who ran toward me in a store reminded me how to run toward my own life. Not away. Toward. If you're listening to this and you know something in your family has been folded and hidden like a letter no one wants to lick shut, hear me, the truth isn't kind, but it is clean. You will cry. You will shake. You will doubt yourself and then you will stand. And when you stand, you will see that the floor holds. I braided Emily's hair tighter that day because the wind had picked up. She handed me a daisy she had mingled with love. My brother watched us and his shoulders settled like he had been holding a bag he could finally put down. We did not look like a greeting card. We looked like people who had learned the cost of silence and paid it and decided to spend the rest of our days on something else. Here is what I keep from all of it: love is not a museum. It is not a display behind glass. It is a kitchen with a light left on and hands that wash what they dirty and voices that say, "I'm sorry," without a tour guide. It is knocking on a locked door with a letter in your pocket, and when the door opens, it is choosing to pass the letter in and not the fire. I was in a grocery store when truth grabbed me by the legs and said, "We are done pretending." I listened. I hope you do too. And now I want to hear from you. Have you ever uncovered a family secret that changed everything? How did you face it, and what did you do next?